You know what really sucks? Is like when you go to pour yourself a cup of coffee and you realize your mug smells like socks or dirty rags.
I don't know why I was smelling the mic, but maybe offset these aromas. It just smells
Isn't that
like
the worst?
just smells like burnt chocolate.
Well, burnt chocolate isn't. Oh, dang, that's pretty potent.
Yeah. You think it's gonna ruin the brew?
There's only one way to find out. Yeah, it will ruin the brew. There's no way to find out.
Nothing like a little more complexity.
Yeah. Well, folks, thank you so much for joining us once again on an episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm-Up Sessions podcast. Friends, I'm not lying when I say I really enjoy the feedback, the reviews that I read, the emails, the messages, the comments. I really enjoy them, and we're listening. And sometimes, actually oftentimes, you guys inspire the topics that we have on the podcast. So if you have any questions or you want us to cover something, whether that's anything from NFTs to birds or photography, coffee, whatever it is, feel free to reach out and suggest that to us. We're always looking for new topics to dissect and talk about. Today, a couple of you have reached out and asked, how do we start a coffee roasting company? How do we start a coffee cart? Some kind of coffee business? What's the process? Because let's be honest, starting a coffee business or a business in general is intimidating. Anything to do with the IRS and the city and the government, it's just like 10 times more anxiety. So today, that's what we're going to break down a little bit, very practical steps on what do you need to do to start a coffee roasting company. But before we dive into that, of course, we're going to pour some batchy, take a sip, see what we're tasting. We're dropping a new coffee this weekend. So today, if you're listening already, the coffee would have already dropped. We're dropping a new coffee, a coffee that we have not yet ever released. In origin, we have not yet ever released. So it's going to be very interesting. Yeah, not sure if we nailed the brew on this one, so we'll give this a taste. But Sergi, any thoughts on this new coffee? What is it? Give us a little breakdown. What is it?
Okay. We're actually talking. I mean, it's something I've been holding on to talk about. Because last time I almost let the cat out of the bag.
The cat out of the bag.
Yeah. This is a fun coffee because we were actually not intentionally sourcing this coffee. We kind of had some samples to find a replacement Guatemalan coffee and ordered it with the batch of samples from our new friends. Is it Mercanta?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. Or Mercon.
No, Mercanta.
Mercanta, yeah. So we made some new friends, recommendation from another friend, got in some samples and really enjoyed our samples. And we first held it off, went back, recupped them again, and this coffee from Burundi it stuck out the whole time, the whole cupping.
Yeah, once again, it's always a really good sign to see a single coffee stand out over multiple cupping tables. Right. It's especially because we do them all blindly. We don't want any bias. I don't want to, it's kind of hard because I go and order these samples. I know what's coming in. I know what the tasting notes are, what to expect. But at the end of the day, you do it blindly, so there's no bias, no nothing. And it's always nice to be like, oh, cool, that was the coffee we chose yesterday or, a couple days ago. But anyways.
And correct me if I'm wrong. We were looking to replace our Guji Uraga. That was one of our goals. So I said we weren't necessarily seeking because we have another Guji afloat, but we were looking to add another coffee into the mix. And this coffee, for me at least, I know you may not always agree with this, but for me, this coffee reminds me of the Uraga in the way that the strawberry flavor in it is a similar flavor to the Uraga. It's not, it's hard to frame because it's a very unique flavor. It's hard to describe because this is a natural processed coffee, but it doesn't taste like a natural. If you get my drift, like Mark, everybody always either supports you or clowns on you about the fact that you either love or hate naturals.
Everybody clowns on me for hating naturals.
Depends on who you talk to, right?
That's right.
So I think, one, the fact that you were impressed with this coffee as a natural says a lot that this coffee has a much cleaner flavor. It doesn't have this intense fermentation on it that distracts you from the complexity of the cup.
It's really not boozy.
Right. Yeah.
And it just has, like, it's just tastes like a nice, complex coffee that doesn't give away whether it's a natural, an anaerobic, or washed. It's just a really solid coffee that you're like, okay, this is good. Like, I'm enjoying this. Yeah. And to be honest, this is going to be a stupid claim, whatever. And we need a whole other podcast episode on this. But hopefully the processing doesn't get in the way of the coffee. And that's stupid to say because, well, that's almost impossible because a washed has a flavor profile, honey, or it does have an impact no matter what. But how can we not allow processing to get in the way of the flavor profile as much as possible is what I'm looking for. That's a really big conversation. Don't oh God, that can just be taken out of context. Like, right. There's so much that needs to be talked about. Maybe that's for another episode. But the reason why I really enjoyed this is because, once again, I would not have said right off the bat, oh God, that's a natural, that's an anaerobic, that's a carbonic maceration, or even that's a washed. I would just be like, actually, I'm not sure. It's a great coffee, you know? So that's what I really enjoy about this. And it's also an origin that we've never ever dropped before. This is Burundi Kayanza, I think, from the farm, right? Ruvumu number 6.
Yeah, I think that's the lot number.
That's the lot number. Yeah. And so a Burundi coffee that I would never have thought that we would be serving Burundi coffees, but they've been popping up like crazy everywhere. Yeah. Which is great. That means there's a sign of like things are getting better, you know, and there's some potential there. But once again, like you said, we weren't really expecting to actually buy it. Like, it was just like, oh, just throw it in the samples.
See what happens.
Yeah. And we're actually, from what the samples that we got, I was actually expecting us to buy another coffee, and we didn't end up buying that coffee because this coffee was just, you know, so much better and just offered something unique to the table. And that's another thing that I like about it. It's a flavor profile. It's very unique, but it's also so us, I think, because it has that stone fruit, almost, I would say like a dried fruit, stone fruit, sweetness to it. It's just a really punchy, sweet coffee. And I love about it. And dude, man, so it's just, there's like so much good things to say because it's so unique. Like the cupping that we had literally today, we roasted the coffee yesterday, and we usually try not to cup within 24 hours. This was like within 12 hours. And we cupped the coffee this morning, and wow, it was like, I don't know what happened in the roast to do that. It was just like, dang, I'm getting some apple that I've never gotten out of it. I'm getting some rich like sweetness. It's like cotton candy-esque, like candied sweetness, but then it had that rich like strawberry, but then the caramel. So I don't know. It was just complex, and I like that. So
that's what stuck out to me from the very beginning when we started getting close in our roast on it. I kept tasting strawberry preserves. I mean, even down to the point of when we were making the label, I couldn't decide whether I was going to put like cooked strawberry. That was too long to fit on the label. Strawberry preserve or strawberry jam, and settled on strawberry jam because it kind of encompasses the whole essence of that.
Apricot jam.
No way. Where's the label? Where is it here?
Do we have it in here? Let's see.
No, I'll double check that.
Yeah.
Who knows? But anyway, the coffee does have a jam kind of cooked fruit flavor to it.
Yeah.
It literally, it just tastes like this. I mean, that's the only way to describe it. It's cooked fruit. That's what it tastes like.
Yeah. I couldn't get the strawberry, but all I was tasting was like apricot, an apricot, like an apricot flavor note that I haven't really tasted apricot this strong and this distinct clearly wise in probably any recent coffee. So friends, regardless, like if you're looking for, and we just pulled it on espresso.
Yeah.
A coffee it was a roast that wasn't dialed.
Yep.
But on espresso, man, with milk, it stands so well. It's just
Yeah, it cuts through a lot. That's one of the great things about this coffee.
Yeah.
I would be happy to have it on batch. I'd be happy to have it on pour over, cold brew, espresso. It's very versatile for different brew methods. So
we could use the rest of the podcast keep talking about how cool this coffee is and how much I'm pumped to be dropping it this weekend. So, but that's that, folks. It's officially live. Go ahead, jump on our website, mirrorcoffeeroasters.com. Check it out. Give it a whirl. It's a tasty one, you know. So,
not to keep talking about coffees, but I do want to throw out the fact that if you're grabbing the Burundi, you might as well tag on another bag, and that bag should be the decaf. Because what happened on today's cupping
we can't talk about that.
Was insane. I mean, this batch, like all of our roasts were just insane this week. Like the Burundi came out insane. The decaf is just, we mistaken it for our freaking anaerobic processed regular
That's
coffee.
crazy.
That
Guys,
was wild.
We cupped it blindly.
Yeah.
And we're both like, okay, this is actually probably one of the better coffees. And I forgot that I even put the decaf on the table.
Yeah.
And then when the reveal happened, I was like, okay, that's pretty insane. So
pretty wild.
Guys, yeah, 100%. But anyways, we don't have much time here left, but we want to add as much value as we can to the people who are looking to start a coffee business, a coffee roasting company, and that's intimidating. It's the stuff that I actually was not looking forward to when we started Mirror. It just feels like there's so much, but really it's not quite as scary as you may think. What helped me was, how can we break this down into small steps and just take one step at a time?
Yeah.
What can we do next? So what's the first thing that you'd recommend people to do?
I mean, the classic thing is a name. As easy, as cheesy as that sounds, you need a name. Because the importance of a name also has to do with your identity as a brand, but also the design that you're going to implement for the whole brand. And it's going to create some form of ethos and vision around what you want to do as a roasting company.
Yes.
So that's one of those things, like I would take your time on it. Don't rush it. If you're looking to start a coffee company, like just roll with ideas of names, process that with people. I don't know for how long, but before we even took any practical steps, we were throwing around wild, like too long of names, you know what I mean? So we took our time with no pressure. And I think that's kind of unique to our situation. So if you're looking to start a company, we've always said the same thing: is make sure you're working in the industry first. Yeah. But while you're working, you can dream. And part of the dreaming phase is thinking up of a name.
And the thing is, having a name isn't just about having a name. I know that sounds obvious, but when you have a name, it actually means that you can start, you get social media handles.
Right.
If the name is taken on social media, which right now it's getting more and more difficult because, you know, people are creating Instagram accounts and TikTok accounts, YouTube accounts every single day. And if your name is taken, that will actually make it a little more harder for people to find you.
Yep.
If they have to sort through, you know, a couple other variations, or, you know, like you might have the name taken and you might think that you could just put an underscore. Well, you need to keep that in mind, that now people have to think about an underscore, which sounds kind of lame, but it's actually, people actually don't want to do the work for anything. So you have to be kind of mindful of that. But not only that, you need a name to get your social media, start your website. If the website is taken, that's a really big problem. The name is actually also going to enable you to put it on your business license. It's going to be the name on your business debit card. It's really the foundational point where you can, you know, jump off from and head forward. So, but that being said, once you get a name, solidify the accounts, solidify potentially a website. And the next thing I would say you would need to do is figure out, if you're doing a coffee cart, this may not apply to you as much, but if you're doing a roasting company and you need a roast out of a space, find where you're going to be roasting. So this could either be, you know, a roast, and this also really does depend also on the size of your roasting. So if it's really small, let's say, like you're roasting on a bullet, you could do that at home, really. You know, like you don't really need very much infrastructure. We bought a 12 kilogram machine, which it's a beast. It's I love it. It's a freaking workhorse. You can't have that in your garage unless you have a massive garage, you know. You need space for it, and you need a dedicated space. So figure out where are you going to do all your packing, all your roasting, and think about also where you're going to store your green coffee. Yeah. You need at least space for at least three or four sacks of coffee, you know, big 70 kilo sacks of coffee. That all needs to take up space. And it may not be as much space as you think. You don't need a giant warehouse, but you need to be mindful about that.
Yeah. And on a broader scheme of things, you have to consider, are you within city limits or are you like in the county? Because that is going to depend on one, just all of the regulations that the city has and all of the requirements when it comes to air. That also will depend on whether you buy like a gas and propane, natural gas, or I mean, that's what I said, natural gas or propane, or you're going to do something like a Loring, which already has recycled air. So it's going to depend on what you need to purchase. So I'd look for that area and get all the regulations from the city about that area. In our case, it was pretty unique because there's not a lot of roasting companies starting up. So to a degree, there was not a lot of regulations to deal with. But I know talking to other folks is depending on literally could be a block away and you're in a different part of town, which has different requirements. And you might have heard of your friend who is roasting on a 1 kilo 2 streets away. But I would clarify all of that before you make those big choices in the build out, because that's going to affect a lot of things. Little thing that caught us off guard is you mentioned a little bit is green coffee and shipping green to your roastery. You have to consider the weather. So we're more or less out in the county, and because there's so much acreage around, there's not really space for semis to navigate that area. We are on a semi-truck route, which helps, but our property is so big that a semi has to drive in to unload it, and that's very difficult.
It's challenging.
That's actually affecting not only our logistics, but that's affecting pricing. So if you're in a place where, like right now, this office is more of an industrial area, that may actually reduce your shipping costs.
Yes. So, I mean, just to clarify also, if you're roasting on a Loring, you still need some gas. So, but the Loring will change actually also regulations because it's recycling air. So you might be able to get away with some things over the other. I mean, if you're starting a coffee roasting company with a Loring, you shouldn't be listening to this podcast. No, just kidding. Totally. But yes, that's actually a really solid point, is that location is going to define a lot of things in your startup. So before you even get the business license, before you get funding, the location is going to, like what you said, like I mean, that's so true. Literally a mile away, you could cross a county line or you could cross a city line. And all of a sudden the regulations are, 25% more tighter and stricter, or it could be 25% less strict, and they actually don't care what you do. Hey, just don't bother your neighbors and you should be fine, and so those things are actually going to change a lot, because it's going to change how much funding you need for the coffee roasting company, how much what your build out's going to look like. It's going to change mostly those things, and that's like the biggest thing when you're looking at getting a coffee roasting company. I'm also really glad that you brought up the shipping thing, because that's also something to really consider. And so not that you can't do it any other way. We just found ways to work around it. It takes more work, but it works. And so so figure out your where your location is going to be. And depending on where you lie, where your location is, do a lot of research into regulations and permits and inspections and all those little things. That, that's just a really big part of it. And really, with most with most government things, inspections and permits, it's a hassle. Talk to any business owner in the food industry or whatever. It's a hassle. You have to do a lot of research, and we can't tell you what you need because literally every county line within even within the Bellingham city limits or outside, it's already changing, which means, get on the website, do research. I'm already emailing people for the future of Mir, where we're going to move. I'm already emailing the city and calling and making sure things are clear, and make sure you have them in writing so you can save them and build accordingly and plan ahead. Planning ahead will actually help you, lower your costs. If you can do things right the first time, it's a lot easier than doing it, right after 5, 6, 7 tries. It just lower costs and gets you, helps you be a little more intentional. Yeah. It just overall, it's going to be, there's so much that's crossing my mind, but it's going to be so much better for you to plan ahead with the permits and all that jazz. Yeah. So.
And we're talking about things like sinks, like drains, like very, very practical things that you need to have that you may not even consider. Like, for example, it's just going to be a roastery. Like, what do I need a sink for? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Yeah. But it's like things that may not seem necessary, but are required.
Yes.
So definitely figure those things out before you start creating the actual layout of a roastery or the cafe or whatever you're doing. Two, also like think ahead. So what are some things you would like to do, like maybe 5 years down the line? Because you don't necessarily want to shortchange yourself and set yourself up for too quick of growth, and then all of a sudden you need to find a new space because you decided to brew cold brew and can cold brew, and now you can't because that space doesn't allow you to do that. So things like that, like considering like roasting coffee and just selling like ground or whole bean coffee, that's a raw product. You're not preparing that. So there's a completely different regulations than if you would brew a cold brew. So you have to consider all of those things and put that in play. Like, is this something you'd be interested in? So a little bit of market research will also help define what regulations you need to look into.
And a lot of that is figuring out, what do you want to do as a coffee roasting company or as the coffee business, whether you're an importer or whatever it is, figuring out what are you going to be doing. And you're totally right. If you can figure out, then you can build a space that you can actually grow with.
Yeah.
I mean, it also goes back to, buying a machine, get a machine that's not too small, but also not too big where it actually causes unnecessary challenges for you in the future. So that's just some things to consider. That could be a whole podcast in its own, but really just do some research, think critically, plan ahead, 2-3 years ahead, and so stuff like that. But what follows up with that is somebody reached out to us asking us about funding. How do you find the funding for it? So our build out cost us close to. We did a lot of work by ourselves, found materials by ourselves, which helped. So if you do the work by yourself, it's a little cheaper. Our build out, I think, cost like $5,000. To remodel a small little space. And
so low.
Simply because you connect with friends, connect with, family, who has connections. Connections are going to help you a lot, ask around, be humble, and try to do as much work as you can by yourself. It's really going to solve some issues. If you have all the funding in the world, cool. You don't have to do anything. Just hire somebody. But chances are that's probably not the case for everybody. But for funding also on top of that, I emptied my savings account. I was going to buy a car. I literally emptied that for the coffee roasting company. A buddy of mine from Oregon was like, hey, honestly, I just want to be part of it. Can I throw in a couple grand? I'm like, perfect. We got a couple of grand from him. Family pitched in. Family was a really big one, which was helpful. And then Sergi, you had a couple of friends that were also like, hey, we could pitch in if you need to.
Yeah,
right?
Totally. Yeah, we had a pretty good, I would say, friend community that was behind the vision that we had. So with that said, like if you're That's why it's so important about what we said earlier is like having a name and then in a sense having an ethos and having a proper business proposal. Because depending on who you're going to reach out to fund this project, whether, that's a bank, because a bank is going to require a business proposal as well for a loan.
Yeah.
Or you're going to reach out to friends. You have to be able to communicate this vision, and you actually have to have a plan in how you're going to make money. How are you going to bring in the revenue?
Right.
So all of those things would just writing those out, preparing the materials, putting some thought and effort into that is going to go a long way. And also like getting it in your brain, like being able to off like the classic elevator pitch. Like if it's just on paper, but it doesn't sit right with you yet, make sure it does, because when you have to make that instant, 2-minute pitch, you have to. And that stuff like that is going to be crucial towards finding the funding for it.
For sure.
Because you're going to look for opportunities wherever. But at the end of the day, the best thing is people who already know you, like friends, family. Second thing is when we were looking for funding, we found out that within our local banking, there was an option to get a credit card, not a full-blown loan, but a credit card that had 0 APR for 12 months. And it could potentially, it was like something like 20 grand or something like that. It was or 20 or 30 grand. It was kind of a semi-big credit card, but it wasn't a full-blown. Maybe I'm wrong, but it was a bigger number.
Yeah.
That allowed you to have no APR for 12 months. So it kind of would be a boost if need be.
That being said, I maxed out 2 of my credit cards.
Not too.
So that was
Exactly. That's right. I remember.
hefty, like $10,000 maxed out, and then you're just like scurrying to pay it off so your credit score doesn't tank for maxing it out. But you got to do what you got to do, you know, and it's, who said starting a small business was ever easy? So it's hard. You have to get creative. You have to find unique ways to get funding. And really, this episode is not about, business tricks and tips. But just throwing it out there, you need to be creative. You need to figure out ways that you can save hair, maybe find a second job for a time period or do something. And that also means you should be a little wise with your spending. You don't need 20 grinders when you start.
Right.
You may not even need a grinder when you start.
Yep.
It might be cool, but you don't need one, you know? And so those things will go a far way because...
Yeah, the key is to start creating revenue. And then have enough capital to continue funding that. So the money is cycling. It's not just cut and dry like A to B to C, but there's a cycle happening. Because what if you do need a grinder? Like for us, out of nowhere, we signed a wholesale account that was wanting 50 pounds of ground coffee, and the only grinder we had at that point was the Forte. There was no way we're going to grind through that much coffee on a Forte on a small grinder. So we had to realize, okay, now we need an EK for the roastery, and then we also probably need a grinder to QC. So now we went from not needing a grinder to needing 2.
Yeah, so once again, like that's not what the episode is about, but it's a lot of really great tips and tricks that can help you cut on spending and what your initial upstart cost needs to be to get the ball rolling. So I had something else in mind, but anything else that can come to mind? What do you think that we might have missed?
I think if I could sum everything up, some of the key elements would be think ahead, don't think immediate. Because one of the things for us, like we realized that we're glad that we bought a 12 kg roaster instead of a smaller roaster. Time is going to be of the essence. Like you need to capitalize on time. So therefore roasting bigger batches or being able to roast smaller batches, like those things are going to matter in the long run. And that really has to do with defining what are you envisioning to serve? Like what kind of coffees? That is also going to depend on your demographic. Like who are you trying to reach? So those ideas, which are going to be part of your proposal, those ideas are key because it's going to help you make decisions not only immediately in a sense of like raising capital or the type of licensing you need, the regulations, but it's going to help you make decisions down the road when you start scaling. It's much easier to scale when you're roasting on a 12 kg and all of a sudden you're roasting, 10,000 pounds a month versus if you are on a 5 kg.
Yeah.
You might need to buy a new machine. So think ahead. And even things like we've said before on the podcast, like, okay, you might need a sample roaster. So what are you going to do with that? So run through those scenarios, ask questions. Again, it would be nearly impossible for us to answer like every scenario on this episode. So utilize the friends and the folks you have in your coffee community right now. Reach out to roasting companies within your like city in context.
For sure. Yeah, that's really excellent. And once again, I cannot state that it is so important to just be creative, that you don't need everything that you think. There's always loopholes. There's always something that you can figure out, that you can save on, do things for a temporary time until you go really. And a lot of these things are also like, we can't really give you all the answers because a lot of things really depend on your business model, what you want to do. It also depends on your local authorities, your governments, your permits, buildings, what you have access to. Not one city is the same as the other. You really have to get creative on that and figure out what works for you. So, but really at the end of the day, one step at a time. You start a bank account, a business bank account, separate your spending just on that bank account, save your receipts. Classic thing.
Please remember an accountant.
Yes. Or, I mean, you could do it yourself, really, but then you need to spend some time researching. How should I do basic accounting? Who's going to do my taxes? Maybe you do it yourself. It's also not that complicated when you're just starting off. But it will take some hours of homework to figure out how to do those. But save your receipts, keep your spending separate. Track what you're buying, track where your money is going, so you don't overspend, stuff like that. I mean, I don't know. So trying to think, I'm pretty sure there's probably some stuff that we left out, but start a bank account and, take things one step at a time. You can do it. It's not impossible, but it's not going to be easy and simple. Yeah. And once again, also utilize your network. Like what you said, like a big thing is ask around. People are willing to help. If, this podcast literally is a resource to help people. We're not the only ones that are willing to help. There's other people around that you can ask questions. And honestly, we could not have done it with a lot of key people in our network. Couldn't have done it without Mr. Velton, who helped us out a lot with sample roasting, was just a helping, supporting hand. Gabby from Red Fox was very beneficial, connecting us with the right people. Edwin from Onyx was beneficial. Like, the network and the community was very, very helpful. So
for sure. I can keep on and on and on about all those things for sure.
But friends, hopefully this was beneficial in some way. Once again, leave your comments, questions down below. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave us a review if this was beneficial. I read every single review, folks. And send us a DM and email. We want to be a helpful resource to anybody who's, pondering these things or is stuck or whatever it is. We're just a helpful resource that we want to keep helping other people during this process and journey. So,
little side note. Like little pause on the whole review thing. Are we going to be that podcast that reads a review?
I was going to start that.
Okay.
I was going to start
I'm
that.
thinking about it. I kind of like it, but it's also kind of cheesy.
Yeah. But what time? We'll see. The podcast is morphing into something in the future. So
fun.
But friends, just for last couple words, new coffee is out. Go pick up a bag if that sounds tasty or intriguing to you. But friends, thank you so much for listening and watching. And remember, one last thing, folks, reflect what's good.